some of this is not necessarily a council prioritization. It's more of like the whole city government prioritization, and that's good. I like how we have, I don't know if in prior years we've included everybody in this, so I like it. I'm in agreement with all of this, and Brad and I clarified that Diamond Lake Regional Trail Corridor, how much we would be involved with Three Rivers on that, but Brad kind of said, well, it'd be hard for them to put a trail through a city without the city agreeing with it, so I think that's good. One thing that I would want to, I have a kind of a clarification question on the Park and Trails Commission to recommend the type of uses allowed on city trails. We already have some policies for example, of snowmobiling. So I wouldn't necessarily want to revisit all of them since we revisited those last year. But if there are new things or new priorities that the Park and Trails Commission should want to recommend, I think that would be good, but we don't need to necessarily rehash everything that we already hashed over a year ago. One thing I would add to that, if the Park and Trails Commission, I wouldn't mind if we had, if we allowed ATVs and UTVs on our roads, city roads. But that's just John Bottomus speaking, not specifically to these priorities. So I think it's good. I'm glad we did the carrot and not the stick on the natural resources. That's all I got.
Okay, Councilmember Henderson.
I very much like the rewording of the core strategy, because it's just much cleaner and really very satisfactory. Strategic objective 5, to strike the word park and to say incorporate existing natural resources into development and recreation programs. That could be a pretty profound piece. A lot of development tends to be knock it all down, level it all up, and then develop it. And if we want to really feature the natural resources that we have, to have that in a goal is, I think, is a serious piece of work, but it's a really good thing. The short-term goal is, I remember working with outside groups. I know that there are some specific groups interested in cricket fields, for example, and it was just make sure that the park system was open to suggestions from those sorts of groups who want a particular thing, make sure they're invited in. And that is the policy of parks and trails for a good while, to continue to enhance that and incorporate it. I love all the action steps, and I'm certainly in favor of carrots for natural resource preservation rather than sticks. I think it just is much more satisfactory. This is a substantial amount of work for Parks and Trails, and they haven't met since, they've missed a couple meetings now. So we need to figure out a way to get them functioning remotely so that they can start doing their work.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I guess I agree with Tom on a lot of this. I think the working with an outside group, I think we should keep that alive. I think there will be outside entities who are interested in doing things in Corcoran who can enhance our parks and recs and activities. I think it's a good item to have on there. I agree with changing the core strategy, the verbiage of it. I think it's a much more concise way to put it. A lot of the action steps I see as being really things for Parks and Trails to do, and I think it's a good task for them to have. Obviously, we need to clarify what we want out of it and how it's going to operate. Who's going to set the policies versus they'll give recommendations, and staff will be involved and the council will be involved as well. So I think they're all good goals. incentives for retention of existing natural resources is a great deal. It's a very difficult one to get in place. I think it's going to require a lot of time to spend on come up with something that works, but it's very difficult to make it work for everybody, and which doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. So I would agree with that as well.
We just didn't have comments from Councilmember Schultz.
You're right, Schultz is the fifth one. So Councilmember Schultz.
I agree with the rewording of the core strategy. And with regards to strategic objectives, I like adding a number 5. I think we should remove park and have the natural resources open up to all development, not just parks. I agree leaving work with outside groups. Like Tom and the mayor said, there's lots of different groups out there with lots of different ideas on amenities that could be brought to Corcoran that could help Corcoran stand out. So we should be open to those. And then the action steps, I agree with all the action steps that are there. The trails in the future, when we take these trails on, we just need to keep our minds open of how we can differentiate our trails between the different seasons of the year to bring in as many types of uses as possible. Because if we just go out and plow all our trails in the wintertime and make them all walking paths, we're not going to gain much out of it. So keeping them open to other types of uses like snowshoeing or skiing or snowmobiling or whatever that people enjoy in the wintertime, I think is a great idea. So I'm good with this one.
Any other follow-up comments from anybody? Hearing none, move on to the next item, which is the ensure high-quality growth that meets the needs of a balanced and vibrant community.
Mayor, Council, the next one I have is maintain excellence in safety and security for our community.
Okay.
Start there.
Same page as the last one.
Oh yeah, there's 2 on that last page, on the same page there. I'll walk through this next one, the slide anyway. So maintain excellence in safety and security for our community. Pretty straightforward here as far as the action steps. Big, straightforward. Director of Public Safety to present fire service work plan to council. Right now, that's tentatively scheduled for May 14th, but probably going to get pushed back. Detective to develop and implement home and business security and survey plan, and that's coming from the previous goals that we had as well. And then continue our contract code enforcement, and the council to establish annual priorities, and the staff to provide regular updates. So this is a gigantic item. However, it's fairly straightforward as far as what the next action steps should be in my mind. I did review these with Matt, and they're gigantic, but he agrees with them. But I'm not on meeting this week.
Okay. Okay, let's start this one with Councilmember Bottom. Comments?
Yeah, the thing that sticks out for me a little bit is the Director of Public Safety to present fire service work plan. Within that fire service work plan, there are tons of like immediate action steps within that. So there's presentation and implementation steps in there, and some of them are going to coincide with the number 2, which is develop and implement home and business security and survey plan, because one of the action items is inside the fire service work plan is to work on home and business security and those kinds of things. So 1 and 2 are pretty well coordinated, and I think we're going to have lots of action steps within that first one. And I think number 3, it was established as a priority last year, and I think it should still be a priority. And I think that we're having success with that one, and we have positive momentum, and I would think we want to keep doing it.
Okay. Councilmember Anderson?
You know, I have little to say about it, but it's all great. It's good stuff.
Okay, and for Mayor Thomas, I agree, I think they're good steps, and I agree, John, the first two items are huge items and are intercoordinated, and there's a lot involved underneath the covers on those. Code enforcement, I agree, we should continue doing that, it's, I think we're having results, and hopefully people will start appreciating it as we get further into it. Councilmember Schultz?
Yeah, I agree with all three of the items. To be honest with you, the development of home and business security and survey plans, I think we talked about this one when we had the discussion that Matt presented. And if I remember right, it was going to be phased in over a couple of years. But correct me if I'm wrong on that, so I'm fine with that. With regards to code enforcement, I think we should continue that. We need to make sure that when we do code enforcement, it's transparent, open, and appears fair to everyone, and that you know that we're taking action and being appropriate to the citizens of the city, so that it doesn't come off heavy-handed. So.
Okay, Councilmember Zajewski?
Sure, I think all of these are good. Again, to Councilmember Bottom's point, there's a lot of things packed into number one. For example, I wanted to make sure that this also included the medical response team that we talked about, and that is a priority, especially in the situation that we're in right now. So I think that that's important to talk about, and I'd like to hear Matt's input on this after hearing the rest of us. And yes, Alan, that is a phased-in plan over, it was either 2 or 3 years, where the first few years is just essentially going out and doing those plans and giving feedback, and then not having enforcement unless it's a blatant violation that's safety required for them to step in. But otherwise, it was letting them know what would be coming and what they can be doing, so that it's not heavy-handed. And then with code enforcement, we did talk about that we didn't want to add extra burden on people during this time. But at the same time, I want to really see this get back to being a priority as soon as we possibly can. I mean, it is something that, to everyone's point, we've got a lot of momentum going, and I think it's important for the city, for sure, to keep that going. So those are my thoughts.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to have Matt provide some context as Councilman Zajewski requested?
Yes.
Matt, do you want to follow up on anything you heard there?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I think one, I can certainly acknowledge that it's, the work plan might look different now than it would have 6 months ago with everything going on. And I think we're in an opportunity to try and tailor that to fit how we can see the future and make manageable goals. And some of them are going to be, it's going to be strategic and incremental. And I think with our fire education and inspection team visits, it is going to start out really educational and really just trying to build those relationships with the businesses, home-based businesses, and commercial businesses in the community. Action step number 2 is a separate resource that's really a proactive police detective type role, which is completely voluntary, something a little bit different than the education and inspection teams in the fire service, in that 2 is if a business or a home wants to have a security survey done, the detective would go out, provide feedback on their home and business to number 1, harden their target, make it a little bit harder to become a victim of criminal activity, provide feedback, benefits of camera locations, lighting, crime prevention strips, environmental design, and several other concepts. So they are a little bit different, but I think the individual visits on 2 were more of at the property owner's request and really related to police and crime-related security, where the fire education and inspection teams related to step number 1, and that was working towards education of our businesses for meeting our fire codes. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any other comments on the issues?
So do we see number 2 as is that a service we would charge residents then?
No, the vision of that really is, and I'm not sure if it's on the website or not yet, we'll start putting it on the website, occasionally put it out on social media, and that is a service that we would provide for the community free of charge. It would be scheduled out, so it would obviously have to fit into our detective's schedule and workload, but he would be able to schedule it out at a later date that worked for the home or business owner, and then our detective's schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to the next core strategy.
Mayor and Council, next core strategy is to ensure high quality growth that meets the needs of a balanced and vibrant community. And this is where I believe the affordability component talked about previously, it does exist already. I do want some feedback on the short-term goal, which was to develop marketing plans for each of the growth areas, northeast, southwest, southeast, primarily. I want to highlight that because that's a pretty substantial undertaking if we're really going to get into marketing plans, and if it's really important at this point. I do feel we can continue to update our design guidelines and establish our vision the best we can, but I want to know whether or not that's really marketing plans. I think that's a contracted service that we have to hire somebody to help out with. Moving over to action steps, the first 2 come straight from the 2040 comprehensive plan. Develop policy to allow the creative use of site planning or PUDs that provide flexibility for development containing affordable housing, such as reduction in lot size, setbacks, street width, floor area, and parking requirements. And I thought it fit in well. It also highlighted that it's something we have to do, but we're not duplicating efforts. We're kind of focusing on one outcome. Same with the second one, explore the suitability of various housing finance options and the housing needs they are meant to address. And I had a brief conversation with Councilor Dejewski on a couple of these things. And what these mean is we're going to look into it. It doesn't mean that we agree there should be resources, that there should be subsidized in any format. It's developing a position of the city on whether or not we should do things. But it's really the action steps are understanding the issue and deciding whether we want to participate in those issues. And the final action step is staff to work with internet providers to understand actual internet availability throughout the city, and the staff to present options to the council to increase capacity. I think we've all seen over the past couple of years a few people coming in and saying internet is really, really a problem. And to me, what this is me working with the internet providers to establish kind of a heat map to show where gaps in service exist. So we, as a council city, can actually make standards. I did receive a confidential item from one of the providers that showed where capacity existed, and I was actually surprised how comprehensive it was. So I think maybe even seeing this, the problem might be more surgical than a gigantic problem. So I think we just want to learn about the problem. So those are the action steps I envisioned. The first 2 are not. They're longer term. I should outline that. That's not a 2020. That's probably an 18-month project. I'll stop there.
Okay, let's start with Councilmember Anderson.
I would certainly agree that developing marketing plans probably is probably best done by somebody who does that for a living, and therefore probably won't do much in any one year. But if we don't have a plan, then we won't know if we're getting what we want. So I think we need to stand there. We need to do what we can this year. Probably isn't going to be a great year to do it, but it's the best. It's a good way to move forward. The action steps, I think, are in the long term for Corcoran really important to build a prosperous community with a variety of opportunities for citizens. It's a big deal, and I think in the long run it will serve the city well.
Thank you. So I'll take the next one. I think the marketing plans, I think they're critical that we do them, whether we do them certainly this year. I can't imagine we'll take on all of those. we do need to have it on our plate as far as being thinking in those terms and figure out how to come up with something more than just letting things happen to us in these different areas. The housing cost issue, I guess I'm just uncomfortable with that because I don't know what I don't know in that area. In other words, I don't know what drives what prohibits us from providing affordable housing. I don't know if it's land costs, I don't know if it's developers' costs, I don't know if it's our ordinances, I don't know if it's state ordinances, I don't know if it's federal ordinances. And those are the kinds of things that I would have to go to a combination of people to get information on that in order to get a bigger picture. And to step in and say, okay, we're going to reduce lot sizes and fix the problem or setbacks, I just don't see that as being an answer. I think it's certainly something we can have on there. But I think if we're going to attack that problem, we have to do it holistically. And I'm not sure how to start with that. So I'd be open to having discussions or getting input as far as what's a good way to get us as a city and as a council and as staff, and then pass that on to, or get it from our developers or pass it on to our developers. So we kind of come up with a team approach to it, with a real solution.
Mayor, if I can jump in, I guess I didn't do a good job writing that. I think that is the intent of what I'm trying to write there. It's being aware of options that are available to the city, and then we develop our policies after we become educated. So it is starting from, let's learn the problem from all sides, and then determine how we want to, or if we want to attack it. So it is a holistic look, the starting point. It wouldn't be looking at, let's talk about setbacks and act. It would be an overarching approach.
Yeah, good, because I didn't want to get in where we're focusing on, on making tweaks and changes when we don't, when at least I don't understand the big problem. I don't know what the issue is, what we could possibly do to solve the problem as a city. So anyway, that's my take on that. The internet provider one, I think Greg, you got a good start on that. If you're getting providers in to give us ideas, we need to understand what where the problems are and where they can be solved and where they can't be solved. I think it's going to be, what we're going through right now probably highlights, and I'm sure there's a lot of students in Corcoran who are having to do remote studies and they've got really crappy internet access, and it's a challenge for them. So it kind of highlights it, but I think in a longer term, bigger picture, I think it's working from home and businesses needing fast internet access are a huge financial and logistic thing for the city. I think the city has a vested interest in trying to facilitate that. Whether we pay for it or not, I think is a totally separate conversation. Okay, next in line will be Councilmember Schultz.
Yeah, I agree that the development of marketing plans is important because we want to be ahead of the game when these developments come, especially in the Northeast with the Brockton Interchange development. So we have that going for us. We have what's going on down in our southeast region, what's going to happen along 55 in the southwest, and water comes to the northwest. So I think we should be proactive in that and try to gear some of those developments that way. So I'm all for that. The PUDs and the flexibility, thank you, Brett, for the clarification on that. I'm all for learning more about what we can do to bring a variety of housing into the city. If we bring businesses in, they're going to need workforce living in the city, or living near the city. So that's definitely a need. As far as the internet goes, I think it's prudent for us to explore what we're doing. I agree with the mayor. I don't know that we want to, I shouldn't say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mayor, but I don't know about financing of internet infrastructure either. I'm not going down that path at this point, but I think we definitely need to find out where our shortfalls are with internet. A lot of people and a lot of kids, like you said, are working from home or studying from home now, and if you can't work from home right now, in a lot of cases, you just can't work. So I think it's definitely something we should be exploring.
Okay, Councilmember Dejewski?
I would say similar to what Alan just said, I agree with the need for the marketing plans. But this year, I just don't see it happening with, it depends on obviously how things recover from this COVID situation, but with a projected downturn in the economy coming, I think we might have bigger need for our resources than to spend it on those things. And even if development is going to slow down itself, hopefully it won't, but the odds of that are pretty low. So just, I would say it's good to have on there, but not something to prioritize over other needs that are going to surface. In fact, the variety of types of housing may be more of an issue, just based on the fact that people may not be able to afford the same type of things that they have in the past as a result of this. So I think both of those things are pretty critical for 1 and 2. And from an educational standpoint, primarily, I think we as the council have a responsibility to get to know the points when it comes to what is available to us, what can we do to be able to expand some of that, as opposed to just profit-driving motive, which is pretty much what happens when you just allow the market to take its own course and people do not get represented equally in those discussions. So I think it's important for us to be responsible and learn more about those things. And then when it comes to internet, I think I'm aligned with what's been said, and that not interested in paying for this. I think we can spend a little bit of time on finding out what we can do to try to facilitate this, but not something I'm willing to subsidize.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bottom?
Yeah, so, I guess I have a take on quite a few of these. I do think we need a marketing plan for the growth areas, especially downtown, which is kind of the major piece of what's going to happen this year. And it's cliche, but if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. We have to have an idea of what we want downtown and kind of market to that. We may not get everything we want, but at least if we want to if we want good ideas, we want to make sure that they're represented, at least in the offering. I like the idea of being creative with planning or PUDs. It's really important, I think, that when one of the things people have asked us is to have our town be unique and sustain the characteristics that it has today. So the flexibility and the looking at different areas and aspects of the PUD is a good thing. With respect to 2 and 3, especially in the housing front, Hennepin County and the Met Council have failed. They've identified the problem of low-income housing, and they've tried to address it and in my opinion, made the problem worse. And they sort of kick the can to these small towns that surround the metro and make them do things and force them to do things. And all it's doing is perpetuating the problem. I am okay with market-based housing. I prefer that. And I think that, as far as workforce housing goes, Maple Grove and Rogers have a ton of workforce that have to drive a long ways, and just because they underpay their workers, we don't need to subsidize that. So I'm not an advocate, and I would vehemently disagree with housing being within the purview of city government. Not that it's a bad thought, but it's a bigger idea and concept than a need. And it's out of what our town government is set up to do. The third thing, the internet, I kind of like what the Lions did with the Lions Park when they alerted the people that were buying houses saying that there are going to be loud noises and smoke and fireworks and loud music and stuff at that park. And I feel like we should put signs in Corcoran that say that we have gravel roads, we have, you know, cow manure smells, we aren't going to have a compost site or a dog park, and our internet is slow. All of those things are really expensive and not needed, in my opinion. And one of the things that we can do to keep our tax rate low is by having the town have a flavor of independence and non-reliance on government for a lot of these things. There's a option for internet. It might not be cheap, but I want no part in our city government paying for or being the internet option for people in our town. And I'll say it again, it's worth saying, Brad will get 1 million calls a day with slow internet if we choose to dip our toe in that area. So I like some of these things, then there are some things that I do not feel should be a core strategy of our town.
Okay. I guess I would just like to reiterate, I don't propose that the city fund internet access for houses in Corcoran, but I haven't heard anyone else say that either, but.
I think everybody has said it, but when somebody comes in and asks for it, there's always yeah, we can help out with that, but there's so little we can do without spending money on the issue. And so, like, I just want to be cautious about even dipping our toe in that.
I agree with you, John, but I have a little bit of expertise in the area, and there are things that can be done to help facilitate it and bring solutions for people to implement on their own, so we know should work there. So, without the city paying for it. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to the next core strategy.
Mayor Council, the next and final core strategy is provide high-quality, innovative municipal services. And I apologize, all the action steps should actually be read. I must have missed that. But the action steps suggested, first is complete test well and purchase site for well treatment facility. If test results are favorable, locate site for water tower, and City Council will consider proceeding with the well treatment facility project. And obviously this is a big to-do with finance implication. However, securing the site would be an ideal project, even if we didn't proceed with anything else. At least know where the site would be. Two, participate in the Northwest Metro Surface Water Supply Study. That's an opportunity to work with several cities to obtain surface